Adrian Bellamy had barely slept in 36 hours. His eyelids felt like sandpaper scraping against his corneas, and the dull ache in his lower back reminded him that carrying a 15-pound baby for hours on end was not, in fact, a sustainable workout plan. But he wasn't complaining. Or at least, not out loud. The Interstellar Medical Center on Helion 7 hummed with its usual sterile intensity. The place reeked faintly of antiseptics and ozone, and the corridors echoed with the uneven shuffle of alien feet and the occasional soft plorp of something gelatinous moving past. It had been 6 months since Adrian had first arrived under the Interworld Exchange Program, a diplomatic initiative that allowed a select few Earthlings to live and work in alien cities. As a pediatric liaison, his job was to help integrate human childcare knowledge into Helion's birthing wards. He'd expected futuristic tech, maybe a robot assistant or two, and some awkward cultural exchanges. He hadn't expected to be the only available human on duty when one of the Earth-born infants caught a fever and started wailing like a siren. Adrian cradled baby Liam, just 4 months old, in the crook of his arm while bouncing softly on his heels. The baby's cries were sharp and rhythmic, the kind of sound that made your molars vibrate. His face was flushed, tiny fists balled up near his ears. The monitor above beeped steadily, showing stable vitals, but the noise was enough to send panic through the sterile corridors. And it did. Nurse Vetra, a tall, bioluminescent being with a pear-shaped torso and long, translucent limbs, rushed into the room with what Adrian could only describe as frantic grace. "What is the emergency?" Vetra's voice trembled with alarm. "Has the larval unit ruptured its internal organs? Is it convulsing? Do we administer vapor sedation?" Adrian blinked slowly. "He's crying. I am aware. It is the sound of suffering. What bodily failure is occurring?" Adrian shifted Liam in his arms and reached into the duffel bag at his feet. "He just wants his bottle." Vetra froze mid-step. "What is bottle, this?" Adrian held up the warm baby bottle like it was a peace treaty. He guided the teat into Liam's mouth, and within seconds the wailing stopped, replaced by soft, contented sucking. The silence was instant and miraculous. Vetra tilted its head. It consumes liquid." "Through oral suction?" "Yes, to eliminate pain." "Well, no, he wasn't in pain, he was just hungry." Vetra's eyes, 3 of them, vertically aligned, blinked in sequence. "You are telling me that this sound, this sonic assault, was not indicative of mortal distress?" "Nope. Just a hungry baby." Vetra stared at Liam, who was now dozing off again, milk dribbling from the side of his mouth. "Then, the sound is not diagnostic, not always. He has different cries." "You learn to tell them apart." "I see." Vetra's skin shifted color slightly, a sign Adrian had learned meant confusion. Adrian sighed and lowered himself gingerly into the chair beside the cot. "You've got to understand, babies aren't like your species young. They can't communicate telepathically or change color to signal status. They cry, that's their default setting." Vetra pressed a hand to its thorax, visibly disturbed. "I must recalibrate our protocols. Immediate sedation is not appropriate response to oral distress." Adrian chuckled. "Definitely not." The door slid open again, and a small team of Helion pediatric interns filed in, summoned presumably by the earlier commotion. One of them, a squat creature named Resh, peered at the now sleeping Liam. "It still lives." "Yes," Vetra replied tersely. Resh looked at Adrian. "You recognized the noise immediately, of course. That's like cry number 2, hungry but not urgent. Cry number 1 is the I'm in pain cry. Cry number 3 is just boredom. 3 distinct cry types," Vetra muttered. "How do you survive this?" "We're used to it. Used to what sounds like a distress signal from a dying animal, pretty much." Resh looked at Adrian like he'd just admitted to drinking antifreeze recreationally. Vetra turned to the interns. "We must document this. The human male will demonstrate the 3 cries." "Wait, what? You said you could distinguish them. We must know." Adrian sighed. "He's not a machine. I can't just make him cry to order. But there must be stimuli to evoke each." Adrian stood slowly, adjusting Liam against his chest. "I'm not going to poke him or make him uncomfortable just so you can hear the sounds. If you want examples, you'll have to shadow me during rounds." Vetra considered this. "Acceptable." Over the next several days, Adrian found himself the subject of unexpected celebrity. Every time a human baby cried, at least one Helion nurse would appear, clipboard in hand, eager to compare the sounds to their growing reference list. The hospital's central database was updated with audio files labeled things like hungry whine, tired wail, and wet diaper howl. One afternoon, as Adrian was changing Liam's diaper, the baby let out a short, sharp scream. Vetra burst in through the door. "What is that one?" Adrian didn't even look up. "Cold wipe on the butt. It's temporary." Vetra paused. "So not internal rupture?" "Nope. Not limb dislocation. Definitely not." Vetra sighed. "Your species is a riddle. The noise-to-danger ratio is severely unbalanced." Adrian chuckled. "You're telling me." But the novelty wore off fast. One evening, while Adrian was helping reposition a human infant recovering from a minor surgery, he slipped on a wet patch near the sink. His right arm took the brunt of the fall. Pain exploded through his shoulder and down into his wrist. He hissed, clutching his arm to his chest. "Don't touch me," he grunted as a nurse approached. "It's bad, I heard a snap." "You heard a snap?" Vetra emerged from behind the supply curtain, alarmed. "We must scan immediately." Adrian nodded, teeth clenched. "Yeah. I think something broke." The scan confirmed it. His radius was fractured and the shoulder joint was strained. He was grounded from infant care for 6 weeks. The weeks dragged. Adrian hated being benched. He helped with training modules, continued giving lectures on human baby behavior, and tried to stay useful, but he missed the daily routine. He missed Liam, now being handled by a rotating team of Helion nurses who still panicked every time he burbled too loudly. One night, Adrian was awakened by a knock on the recovery room door. Vetra entered, holding a tablet. "There is a problem. Liam is crying. None of the responses have worked." "Did you give him his bottle?" Vetra blinked. "We attempted scent calibration, ambient temperature adjustment, and vibrational soothing." Adrian swung his legs off the bed. "That's great, but did you give him his bottle?" "No, his feeding time is not for another 39 minutes. Adrian stood slowly. Well, his stomach didn't get the memo. He followed Vetra to the nursery, arm still in a sling. Liam was beet red and flailing. The audio sensors were lighting up like a Christmas tree. Adrian picked up the baby with his good arm. "Hey there, buddy, I got you." He turned. "Bottle." Now, Vetra handed it over. The moment the nipple touched Liam's lips, the crying stopped. "I don't get it," Vetra said softly. "He wasn't scheduled to be hungry." "He doesn't care about your schedule. He's human. We're chaotic like that." Vetra looked down at Liam, who was now cooing softly. "And you just knew," Adrian smiled. "Yeah, I just knew," Vetra tilted its head. "You are not a medical genius. You are simply paying attention." "Exactly." The silence between them was comfortable. Adrian tucked the blanket higher around Liam, then looked up. "You want to hold him?" Vetra hesitated, then extended its arms. Adrian guided the baby gently into its grasp. Liam gurgled and kicked, then settled. Vetra stared at him. "He does not fear me." "Babies don't fear, not unless they're taught to." Vetra nodded slowly. "Your species." "You are maddening, illogical, loud, but also kind." Adrian chuckled. "We're a package deal." And for the first time, Vetra smiled with its eyes. Adrian didn't expect to be summoned at dawn. The corridor lights hadn't even adjusted to daytime, yet still dimmed in their soft choral pulse, and Adrian's arm was only just out of the sling. He'd planned to spend the morning sipping something hot and pretending not to read the latest report on cross-species neonatal care protocols. Instead, a junior Helion intern named Qual had shown up outside his temporary quarters, eyes wide, limbs twitching. "There's an anomaly in the sleep chamber," Qual said, keeping his voice low. Adrian groaned as he pulled on a jacket over his scrubs. "If it's about a baby crying again, no," Qual interrupted. "This time it's the human adult. She's humming." Adrian stopped with one arm halfway through the sleeve. "Humming," he repeated. "Yes, there is no external auditory input. She is producing the tones herself. Soft, rhythmic. Repetitive, it is causing unrest." Adrian let out a breath through his nose. "Soothing a baby by humming is normal. It's not an anomaly. She is doing it while the infant is already asleep." Adrian blinked. "And she has continued for over 40 minutes without pause." even while unblinking. Right, okay, that's still not a crisis. But it is not efficient, Qual insisted. There is no reason for the vocalization. She is not communicating. It serves no function. Adrian zipped up the front of his jacket. You ever heard of comfort? Qual's pupils narrowed. We were told humans required rest. She is choosing to remain upright, vocalizing for no apparent gain. They walked briskly down the corridor, the air cool and dry. Adrian rubbed at the back of his neck, still stiff from sleeping awkwardly. Look, he said as they neared the chamber. Sometimes when someone's been through a rough delivery, especially without a partner present, they get stuck in a kind of loop. Humming helps regulate their breathing, gives them something to focus on. It's not logical, but it works. Qual slowed as they reached the room. Inside, through the transparent wall, a woman sat on the edge of a padded bench. Her baby rested in a temperature-controlled bassinet beside her, sleeping peacefully. She wasn't moving, except for her lips and the soft tilt of her head as she hummed what sounded vaguely like a lullaby. Adrian stepped inside. Morning, Lydia, she looked up, still humming. Mind if I sit? She nodded, barely, and continued. He lowered himself into the chair near her, waited a moment, then said, You don't have to keep doing that, you know, he's out cold. I know, she whispered. Her voice was hoarse. Adrian leaned back. Want to tell me what's going on? She didn't answer right away. Her gaze was fixed on nothing in particular. Sometimes I forget he's real, she said finally. The room's too quiet without him crying, so I fill it. Adrian nodded slowly. That's not unusual. Qual hovered in the doorway, visibly uncertain whether to interrupt. Adrian glanced over. Give us a minute. Qual backed away, his steps silent. Lydia rubbed her palms together. They keep offering to sedate me when I don't sleep. I said no, but they keep asking. They don't understand why someone would choose to be awake when they could be unconscious, Adrian said. To them, rest is a biological obligation, not emotional. They don't understand a lot of things. They're trying, so are we. She gave him a weary look. They asked if I was malfunctioning. Yeah, Adrian said gently. They mean well, but tact isn't their strong suit. She looked at the bassinet. He's eating okay, right? Better than okay. He's gaining weight, latching well. You're doing fine, Lydia, she nodded, but didn't seem reassured. Back home, my sister said I'd never manage this alone. She said I'd panic. Adrian tilted his head. Have you? No, there you go. I'm too tired to panic. That counts. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable. Then Lydia said, They tried to scan me while I was breastfeeding. Adrian winced. Yeah. That's a conversation I've been meaning to have with Vetra. I told them to stop, but they didn't listen until I raised my voice. Then they looked at me like I'd attacked them. Adrian stood up. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You'd better. As he exited the chamber, Qual stepped back into view. She is not malfunctioning, he said, as though announcing a discovery. No, Adrian replied. She's being human. Later that day, Adrian found Vetra in the diagnostics bay, realigning a sensory calibration pod. You tried to scan a nursing mother, he said without preamble. She was producing excess oxytocin. We wished to monitor neural activity. She was producing hormones because she was feeding her child. That's not a malfunction, that's nature. Vetra paused. We did not intend to cause distress. You did. Vetra turned to face him. It is inefficient to rely on instinctual behavior without analysis. She's not a case file. She's still healing. If you want cooperation, you have to respect boundaries. Vetra's skin patterns shifted to a dull green. We are attempting to bridge understanding, but the logic is elusive. It's not logic, it's empathy. You don't have to understand her feelings, just accept that they exist. Vetra was quiet for a long moment. Then, we have been reviewing human emotional variance. It is extensive. Yes, it frequently contradicts observable needs. Also yes. And yet it persists. Welcome to the club. That evening, Adrian visited the training wing where a group of Helion interns was gathered around a simulation pod. They were reviewing a model of a human infant's digestive system. Why does the organ produce gas? One asked as Adrian approached. Because babies swallow air when feeding, he said. Especially if they gulp too fast. Their systems are immature. The gas builds up and causes discomfort. Then why not extract the air directly? They don't like tubes shoved down their throats. The intern looked puzzled. But it would solve the problem. Adrian gestured to a nearby dummy. Here. Let me show you something. He picked up the model baby and rested it against his shoulder, gently patting its back. This is called burping. You do it after feeding. A soft puff of air escaped from the dummy's speaker. See, no tube required. Just gravity and a light tap. Another intern leaned in. But how do you know when enough gas has been expelled? You don't. You just try, and if the baby's still uncomfortable, you try again later. Trial and error. The group conferred quietly, exchanging notes. Adrian set the dummy down. You're not going to find perfect patterns with human infants. They're unpredictable, that's the point. A smaller Helion, barely up to Adrian's chest, raised a limb. Then how do you maintain routine? You don't. You adapt. The room went silent as the concept settled. Adaptation without data, someone whispered. Adrian smiled, tired but amused. Welcome to parenting. That night, as he passed the common ward, he noticed a faint tune echoing softly through the corridor, not mechanical. Not recorded, he followed the sound to a dimly lit chamber. Inside, Vetra stood beside an infant's cot, softly humming a shaky, halting melody. Adrian didn't interrupt. He just listened. It was nearing the end of Adrian's shift when the alert chimed. A low, pulsing tone different from the emergency call and softer than the general paging system. He glanced up from the terminal, where he'd been reviewing feeding logs, and frowned. That tone usually meant a consult request, not a crisis. Still, it was odd timing. The Helion staff typically avoided calling him during the final hour of his rotation unless there was no alternative. He tapped his screen. Which unit? Hydro Neutrality Chamber 6, came the automated reply. That was the room designed for aquatic-based species deliveries. No human infants were housed there. Curious now, Adrian stood, stretching his still stiff shoulder. He grabbed his translator badge out of habit and clipped it to his collar. When he reached Chamber 6, the door was already open. Inside, the lighting had been dimmed to a bluish wash, reflecting off the shallow pools that lined the room. A figure stood near one of the pools, tall and cloaked in a silvery protective wrap. It took Adrian a second to recognize the alien. It was Inukor, one of the aquatic midwives rarely seen outside their native habitat rooms. Their species didn't usually interact with human patients, given the stark environmental differences. Inukor turned, revealing the delicate gill filaments along the sides of their neck. You are Adrian Bellamy. That's me, Adrian replied, stepping carefully between the moisture pads on the floor. You asked for a consult. Inukor's voice came through the translator like the rumble of a waterfall filtered through glass. There is a newborn that does not respond to standard aquatic comfort stimuli. The gestation was artificial. The recipient is human. Adrian stopped. Wait, you're saying a human carried an aquatic infant? The recipient volunteered. The embryo was modified to gestate in a non-submerged mammalian host. The result is viable. Adrian let out a slow breath. All right. Still, if the infant isn't responding, I need to know what that means. What are you seeing? Inukor gestured toward the central enclosure. Inside, nestled in a shallow nutrient gel, was a creature no larger than a loaf of bread. It had soft, translucent skin, a surprisingly humanoid face, and delicate fins along its forearms. Its chest rose and fell in quick, short breaths. Its eyes were closed. Adrian leaned over. What's the issue? It is not bonding. It makes no attempt to orient to my voice. It does not respond to scent markers. It ignores temperature modulation. What's its gestational age, equivalent to 35 human weeks? Adrian frowned. So preterm by human standards, but viable. Has it fed? Yes. Nutritional absorption is adequate. Adrian watched the infant for a moment, then crouched next to the basin. Do you mind if I try something? It is why you were summoned. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, rolled cloth. Inside was a scrap of flannel, faded but clean. He dabbed it in warm water from the nearby dispenser, then gently brushed it across the infant's brow. Nothing happened at first. Then, slowly, the infant's fins twitched. One eye cracked open. There we go, Adrian murmured. That's contact. Inukor leaned forward. What did you do? I used a soft cloth soaked in warm water. It mimics skin-to-skin touch. Human babies, especially preterm ones, respond well to it. The contact helps regulate their breathing and heartbeat. Might work here too. The infant's limbs shifted, small and slow. It emitted a low, warbling sound almost like a purr. A new core tilted their head. We had not considered tactile simulation. Our young are not touched for the first 30 cycles. Well, human babies are all about touch. They need it. Deprive them of it and their development gets off track. A new core was silent for a moment. This is not in the protocols. Your protocols were written for your species. This infant is a hybrid, right? Different rules. A few moments passed. The infant had curled slightly toward the cloth, one hand resting against it. Its breathing deepened. A new core stared. Its heart rate has stabilized. Touch isn't just comfort, it's communication. Your species might use bioluminescence or water currents. We use skin, sound, scent. A new core straightened. Then we will adjust our care methods. Adrian nodded. I'd recommend assigning a consistent caregiver, someone the baby can learn to recognize, even if it's by voice or movement. A new core's gills fluttered. You believe it will imprint. It's already happening. Later that day, Vetra found him in the common break area, sipping something that passed for tea. She sat opposite him, holding a small crystalline container of nutrient gel. I have reviewed your handling of the hybrid neonate, she said. Adrian didn't look up. You disapprove. I do not understand how cloth and warmth could outperform our calibrated comfort systems. Because your systems are designed for predictability. Babies aren't predictable. Vetra tapped the side of her container, watching the gel inside ripple. We are beginning to suspect that human infants are not the anomaly. It may be humans themselves. Adrian cracked a smile. Glad you're catching on. She leaned forward. Explain something. The mother of the hybrid infant requested to hold it despite it being submerged in nutrient gel. Yes. We explained that it is unnecessary, that the infant gains nothing from proximity. She insisted. She's the one who carried it. Bonding matters, but she cannot breathe underwater. So she asked for a barrier. She just wanted it close. She wept, Vetra said flatly. Without apparent injury, Adrian set down his cup. That's normal. Why? Because she was overwhelmed. Because she didn't know if the baby would survive. Because she was scared and relieved at the same time. Vetra stared at him, and tears are the result. Sometimes. It's not about logic. She thanked the infant. She was grateful. It does not speak. It didn't need to. Vetra looked down. You are a confusing species. Adrian stood, stretching again. We get that a lot. 3 days later, a new core requested Adrian's presence again. This time, the infant had been moved to a specialized cradle that allowed partial submersion while keeping the head exposed to air. The mother sat beside it, her hand resting gently on the gel surface. She sings to it, a new core whispered. Adrian nodded. Yeah. That's normal. We recorded the frequency. It has no harmonics. It's not about sound quality, it's about presence. She told me he knows I'm here. She's right. A new core was quiet for a long time. I begin to understand how little we understand. Adrian smiled faintly. You're getting there. The infant stirred, one fin brushing against the glass dome of the cradle. The mother leaned closer. Her voice was soft, the words unintelligible to the infant, but the tone unmistakable, gentle, steady, full of quiet awe. A new core touched the edge of the cradle. We were taught that emotional display in the early cycle is inefficiency, but perhaps it is function in disguise. Adrian nodded. Sometimes the messiest things are the ones that matter most. No monitors beeped. No alarm sounded. There was only the quiet hum of the cradle and the murmur of a mother's voice. Everything had settled. No more cries, no more confusion, just connection.